Thanks for joining me today. I know it's been a while, so today I'd like to take some time to talk to you about the GNOME desktop and how I configure my desktop using GNOME extensions to maximize my workflows. So let's get started. So the GNOME desktop is my preferred graphical user interface. However, there are a few things that I always do when I set up a new system for myself using GNOME. And that's where GNOME extensions come in quite handy because they allow you to customize your GNOME desktop experience more to your liking. So today I'm going to be using a Fedora 40 to show you 7 things that I do to make my GNOME experience even better. Now, the thing to remember about GNOME extensions is to find the one or ones that you will actually use. Don't go extension crazy because you'll end up forgetting about the ones you aren't using anyway. So to get going, there are a couple of utilities that you'll want to install. One of them is a Flatpak, and the other you can find in your particular distribution's repositories. Now, if you're running Ubuntu or some other distro that does not have Flatpak support included, you will first want to go to the flathub.org website and add Flatpak support. And I've included the link to that in the show notes. Fortunately, however, Fedora does have Flatpak support already included. So the two utilities are the GNOME Extension Manager by Matthew Jakeman, and the other is the GNOME Tweak Tool. So let's start by installing the GNOME Tweak Tool. In Fedora, I'll open up the Fedora Software Center here, and we'll search for the GNOME Tweak Tool. Here it is. So we'll click on that. And if you notice, it's in the Fedora Linux repository. So we're going to install that here. It should go pretty quickly. All right. And let's open that up first before we do the second one. So if we go here, there are a couple of things that I like to do. Number one, I like to increase the size of the fonts a bit. Let's see where we have scaling factor. So I'll go to maybe a 1.5 to make it a little bit easier for you to read. You can also set the appearance. You can change the cursor, different icons, the background, what have you. Same thing for sound. But what I like to do is go in and add a maximize and minimize button. And I like to center new windows on the screen. I think that's it for this one. Okay, so we're good there. So now I have a nice maximize and minimize button. Minimize, maximize. And then the second utility is, I mentioned earlier, the GNOME Extension Manager. So we'll type extension. Click on that one. And that's by Matthew. Oh, come on, Software Center, let's go. I don't know why it does this. Okay, Matthew Jakeman. This is in the FlatHub. We'll install that. So we'll go ahead and let this install. So I'll pause the video, let this finish, and then I'll come back and pick up where we left off. Okay, so we got the extension manager installed. I'm going to go ahead and open it. Give it a moment, and we'll close this. And what's really nice about this, any extensions that you have installed, custom extensions, they'll appear in the list here. So the first thing we'll do, we'll start browsing for those extensions, and I've got, let's see, 5 different ones that I like to install. So let's start with the first one. The first one is called Blur My Shell. So in GNOME, when you go into your application view, if you will, or you click on the application icon here where you show apps, notice how everything is pretty much, not so much grayed out, but very opaque, right? Very opaque. Blur My Shell allows you to blur the background. I just like the effect. So if we do a search for Blur My Shell, I click Install. We'll install that, and we'll go to Installed. And if we were to click on the application view, notice how the background is nice and blurred behind it. It's not something that's, absolutely critical to have, but I really like this overall look instead of that very opaque background. And you can adjust the different levels of blur here, right here. So you can manage the effects. I really don't do a whole lot with these custom effects. I've played with them a bit. You can blur the panel, the overview, the dash itself, the applications. Just kind of toy with some of these settings to see what you like. I pretty much leave it at the default setting here because I like this. So that's Blur My Shell. Another one that I always install is Caffeine. Many of you probably have heard of Caffeine. So what's good about Caffeine is that it allows you, so if you watch videos, like I like to watch videos on my computer, but I also have my computer sleep power settings set to go to sleep after so many minutes of inactivity where you're not using a mouse or a keyboard. And if you're watching a video or a movie or something, when that sleep timer hits, your screen will go blank because your system goes to sleep. Well, if you install Caffeine, Caffeine keeps it awake. And let me get it installed here. We'll go back. All right, installed. So you can use Caffeine to keep your screen pretty much awake where it won't go into sleep mode. So you can say enable for full screen apps. Typically I run my videos and movies full screen. Remember the state, pause and resume, night light, allow screen blank. This is never. Always are for apps on list. You can also specify here, show timer at the top panel, notifications, and you can set a timer on this too, right? So you can put custom values in here. And I really like using Caffeine. So, watching videos, when you enable it, Caffeine kicks in and says, hey, Caffeine kicks in and says, hey, I'm going to keep your screen up and running as long as you're watching a full screen video, what have you. So that's Caffeine. Oh, and by the way, if you want to uninstall a particular, as you see I clicked here on this little down arrow, if you want to remove any of these extensions, you just click the remove button and it'll uninstall it. Okay, the next extension that I use allows me to format the date and time that you see here in this top panel. And the name of that extension is called the Date Menu Formatter by Marcin Jakubowski. Apologies if I mispronounced the name. So let's search for that here. Menu Formatter. Here it is. So we'll install that. And keep an eye on the format of this date and time because we're gonna change this. So if we go into the preferences for that extension, and I'll expand it out a little bit here. It'll be this, see. So you have different formatters that you want to use. I just leave it at the default. You can adjust the font size. So if you want the font to be a bit bigger, let's say we want a 12-point font here. You can align the text either left justified, center, I like it centered, or right justified. This text box right here is called the pattern, and you have a little preview of what it looks like. If you scroll down a bit, these are the available pattern components, and you can click this link to see a full list on the website. So let's say I want to see, I like the format of having the day, the full day, the month, the year, and of course the time. So let's look here in the formatter. I want the full month. So I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, actually the day. Let's do the day first. So let's see, DD. Let's start there. So we'll do this. Weekday, here we go. Full weekday, so that's 4 capital E's. So we'll put one more. Notice it says Sunday, see how it changed here as well? And I want to put a dash instead of this comma. So I'll get rid of that. There's a dash. For the month, I want the full month, so that's 4 capital M's, or already 3. I'll put a fourth one here. There it is, the full month. And I want the day, which looks good here. I'll leave it at that. I'll put a comma. Let's see. I want to include the year now, so I'll put a comma. And for the year, 2-digit year, let's see which one we want to go with here. How about we do this? Put 1. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, here we go. 2024. Sunday, October 20th, 2024. And for the time, where is the time? I think it's down here somewhere. Here it is. So we can do 24-hour time or 12-hour. I think I'm going to leave it at that. 8:41. How do we get AM or PM? Let's see. Tuesday. Here we go. AM, PM. So that's 3 lowercase a's. Like so. All right. That looks good. We'll close this. Actually, let's go back. It didn't get the AM or PM quite right. Let's see what I did wrong here. Hour. Let's change the formatter that we're using here. All right, so let's do this. AM. For some reason, it's not changing up here. I know it's got to be something I'm getting wrong. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Just took it a moment. Okay. So I changed the formatter to Luxon. It just took it a few moments to update. So you can do this where it updates the clock every minute, or if you want to show the seconds, it'll do it every second. I think that's what it was previously. So there was just a delay. It wasn't so much that I was a formatter. I just had it set to update every minute. So we'll close that. And now I've got a nicely formatted date. So this is the one that I really like using, but as you saw earlier, there are a number of different date formatters to use. So this is the date menu formatter extension. All right, next up is the CoverFlow Alt-Tab extension. Now, back when I was using the Mac, this was several years ago, I remember watching Steve Jobs introduce a new feature in OS X called a CoverFlow. And I really liked using that on the Mac. Well, good news is that for those of you who remember CoverFlow, there's a GNOME extension which does a really good job at mimicking that functionality. So let's install that now. So we'll type CoverFlow, Alt-Tab. We'll install that. And this one actually has quite a few settings to it. I won't go through all of these. As you can see, there are quite a few in here, the different ways you can do animations. I mean, it goes way beyond what OS X was able to do. So the only thing that I like to change, and let me open up a couple of other, if fact, let me close this. I want to show you how it works. I'm going to open up the File Explorer. We'll minimize that. Open up, say, a terminal. Minimize that. And we'll open up Firefox. And we'll minimize that. And we'll minimize that. So as you do Alt-Tab, this is how cover flow looks. So you can Alt-Tab between it. You can smooth out the animation if you like. So if we go in and let's say go here, and I'm going to change one of the settings here, cover flow. We'll do timeline. Close that. And now if you notice, when you're Alt-tabbing, it gives you that macOS time machine look to it almost, or a timeline look. And you can go Alt-Shift-Tab and go backwards. So if you like that functionality or that feature, this is definitely an extension that you'll want to install. And there are so many different options to it. So if you want to do a carousel, for example, we can Alt-Tab through that. Makes it look like a carousel going round and around. So that's the cover flow Alt-Tab extension for GNOME. You may want to definitely check this one out. Now this next extension is an absolute favorite of mine. It's called Dash to Dock. You see I've got it, searched for it here. Now I know that there are quite a few of you who prefer what I like to call its bigger brother, Dash to Panel. But first, let's get Dash to Dock installed to take a quick look at it, and then I'll show you Dash to Panel. I call Dash to Panel more of an honorable mention for me, so that you can decide which one best suits your needs. However, before I install either one of these, I've never really liked the way the GNOME desktop hides the dock. So in order to gain access to it, you either have to press the meta key on your keyboard, or you have to click this little workspace switcher here in the top left corner. And in my opinion, this is not an intuitive way to launch applications in GNOME, right? Just to get access to this thing. If you want to show your apps or something like that, I don't like having to go that extra. I know it's like one click or one keyboard press, but to me, this is just not all that intuitive. Now, the way Ubuntu does it, the Ubuntu dock does a really good job when it comes to this because, one, it's always visible on the screen. You can move it from left to the right side or to the bottom or what have you. And it can be configured to auto-hide, when a window is either maximized or comes into contact with it. However, because Fedora and several other distros out there that include the GNOME desktop by default go with the default GNOME desktop metaphor, you may want to change this behavior as I always do. So let's go ahead and get Dash to Dock installed, and I'll show you what I mean. So we'll get that installed. Move the window up. So notice how it hides now. That's a default behavior of Dash to Dock. So this is Dash to Dock. Notice I don't have to specifically hit either the meta key or click this workspace switcher to get access to it. It's always visible, unless of course you have a window that comes into contact with it, or if you maximize it, it just hides automatically for you. Now you can change this behavior in Dash to Dock. If we come in here, there are a lot of settings available for it. Position and size. If you have multi-monitors, you can have the dock displayed either on all monitors, or on your primary monitor, or what have you. And I'm running in a virtual machine right now. You can move it to the left side of the screen, similar to what Ubuntu has. Of course, the bottom, the top, or over to the right. I'll put it over to the left. Intelligent Auto Hide, even more settings here. I typically don't do anything with this, but I'll let you explore it a bit. You can adjust the dock size limit. Let's kind of play with it here. So I made it smaller. I'll just stick with the default. Panel mode. So you can, just like Ubuntu, this is how Ubuntu's looks. You can extend it all the way to the screen edges. So you see here, it just goes from top to bottom. Place icons to the center. See how it moves it? So there's a lot of good customizations to this thing. Icon size, you can adjust the size. You want them a little bigger, you want them a little smaller, to your liking. I like to keep it about 48 or so. Preview size scale. I think this is similar to, oh, it is, these are for previews. So if you have a window that's open, let's say this, it shows you a little preview of the actual application that's running. So let's see if we adjust the size a little bit. See, it made it bigger. Right? So launchers, you can show pinned applications, show running applications, isolate workspaces. There's so many settings in here. Keep the focus application always visible in the dash. Show applications icon, move to the beginning of the dock. Right here. See, I went to the top. I prefer it at the bottom. Animate, show applications. I mean, there's so many settings that you can go through. If you want the trash can, which appears here, or you can remove it if you don't want it. Any mounted volume, so if you have an external USB or what have you, you can enable or disable that. I don't really have any mounted drives at the moment. Wiggle urgent application, so if there's a notification or something that's popping up for an application, it'll wiggle the icon to kind of get your attention. Hide application tooltips. What else do we have here? Behavior. I'll let you play with these. I typically don't do anything here. Shrink the dash, save space, reducing padding and border radius. Take a look at this. Okay. This may be good for lower resolution, let's say laptop displays or something. Show overview on startup, use built-in themes, customize windows, center indicators, so opacity. So you can make it 100% opaque if you want, or you can reduce the opacity down. You can do dynamic, or whatever the default is. There's so many settings in here to choose from. But that's dash to dock. Now, I'm going to show you dash to panel. So let me disable dash to dock. Just turn it off this way. We'll go to dash to panel. Here's dash to panel. We'll install that one. Here's the panel. So this panel, if you notice, this top panel has disappeared. And now you have more of a Windows 7 type look and feel to your GNOME desktop. Let me see here. Yeah, it's installed. Good. So we'll close this. And we'll go to dash to panel settings. I just right-clicked on the Show Apps icon here. And again, you've got a number of different settings that you can choose from. Panel IntelliHide, right? Apply changes to all monitors. You can put it on the top if you want it on the top. You can put it on left side of the screen, right side of the screen, and many of you may prefer using this dash to panel feature here. Panel thickness, you can adjust that here. The panel length, I've got it the entire length of the screen, but you can shorten it down if you want. What else do we have? You can adjust the position of the buttons and icons here by shifting them up or down. There are different styles for the panel. There's a lot of settings in here, guys. So definitely check it out. If you think dash to panel is a better option for you, then definitely load it up and go with it. So these are the key extensions, GNOME extensions, that I always install on my GNOME desktop. I hope you like them. I hope you found any of these, if you found any of these useful, then you definitely may want to go ahead and install them and check them out. But based on what I said earlier, you may not want to go extension crazy. You could end up with a dozen or more of these extensions installed on your system, and you later find or figure out that really there's only like 4 or 5 of them that you actually use. So go through the list, take a look at the ones that you find interesting, and get those installed and start using them. Finally, if there are any extensions that you prefer, which I didn't cover here, then please include those in the chat. I wanted to thank you, all of you, for joining me today. And if you like what I've shown you, please click that like button, as it does help the algorithm to suggest my channel for those folks who are looking for more content like this. And if you're not a subscriber, then also please hit that subscribe button as well. So I'll see you next time. Peace.